So this is the fourth lecture on advanced nonlinear physics. It is dedicated to improvement on the simple advection equations. One is called advection diffusion and the other is KDV. So the first question is, does wave breaking always leads to such a simple type of shock with a sharp discontinuity as we expect from the previous lectures? The answer is no in general, but in the presence of viscosity, this is kind of correct. And this is what we will discuss now. So first, let's modify, say, the traffic flow model we had. Remember that we assume that Q is a function of rho alone. Now change it to Q tilde, which is the previous Q minus nu d rho dx with positive mu. It means that Q is no longer a simple function of rho. It depends also on its derivative. And for instance, when the flow, the density of the traffic increases ahead of you, then you decrease your velocity and the flux decrease. This is an effect due to this new term, the minus nu rho x. So as usual, the conservation equation reads rho sub t plus q tilde sub x equals 0. And now this is rho sub t plus c of rho sub x, where c is dq d rho, the former q. And this object is equal to nu rho, second derivative of rho with respect to x. And it's called an advection diffusion equation because this is the usual advection equation. And that would be if nu were 0. And now, if instead you remove the c of rho, you have simply a diffusion equation where d rho dt is proportional to the second derivative of rho with respect to x. Hence the name, advection diffusion. And this new term, diffusive term, actually induces damping. And it's easy to see it when one considers the following configuration. Rho is a constant plus a small disturbance. So one can linearize the equation 1. And for instance, rho sub t is simply rho 1 sub t. At first order, this leads to c of rho naught times rho 1 sub x. And c of rho naught is denoted by c naught. And this is equal to nu, second derivative with respect to x of rho 1. Since it's a linear equation, one looks for a plane wave solution. And if you insert this into the linear equation, the time derivative amounts to multiply by minus I omega. The position derivative amounts to multiply by ik c naught equals minus nu k square, because the second derivative is ik to the square. And I factorized out the expression a exponential I blah, blah. And this equation, removing the i's, reads omega equals c naught k minus I nu k square. And this imaginary part here in the frequency leads to a damping, and it's easy to see it. The minus I omega t has a contribution, which is minus nu k square t. There are other contributions, but this one is important. It's an exponential damping of the wave. So indeed, this term is a kind of a damping or viscosity, speaking loosely. So how does this viscosity affect the shock? Well, let's see. We take an initial Riemann condition, a sharp step from rho 1 to rho 2, where rho 1 is larger than rho 2. And we consider the case where c is an increasing function of rho. So indeed, this should lead to a shock according to the method of characteristics, because the C1 here, C of rho 1, is larger than C of rho 2, and the characteristics cross. Now, is there a nice solution which interpolates between these two, continuous, not discontinuous as before, which moves at a constant velocity u. And that would be our new regularized shock. So we look for such a solution. We denote as psi x minus ut, and we look for a solution where rho depends only on x minus ut. So for instance, rho sub x will be rho prime, rho sub t will be minus u rho prime, where rho prime is periodic psi. So the previous equation, this one here, it's simply minus u rho prime plus c of rho prime equals nu rho double prime. And it admits a very simple first integral, minus u rho plus q of rho. Indeed, if you derive q of rho with respect to position, you get, with respect to psi, you get c rho prime plus an integration constant a equals nu rho prime. And we can determine a, but at this point, it's not yet necessary. Just look at the boundary conditions. At plus or minus infinity, rho prime should cancel. So here one has minus u rho 1 plus q of rho 1 plus a equals 0. And here also, minus u rho 2 plus q of rho 2 plus a equals 0. You make the difference of these two equations, and you find that u is q of rho 2 minus q of rho 1 divided by the difference. And that's nice because it's the same result we had for the simplified model of advection equation. And that's natural because our result does not depend on mu, so it's natural that it's also the result when mu equals 0. Okay, but one can do more and study some characteristics of this new profile, which is a solution of this red equation. So the red equation is written here, and one uses the usual technique, write d psi equals d rho divided by rho prime, indeed, and then rho prime is given by this. So it's easy to integrate. Here, a primitive is psi divided by nu equals a primitive of d rho divided by rho prime, which is d. So I change here the notation d curly rho divided by this guy, q of curly rho minus u of curly rho plus a. And this is a function of usual rho, the guy, the boundary of integration here. So depending on q, I will not have always the same function, but if q is known, I can compute f. And once f is known, by inversion, I just get rho equals the reciprocal function f minus 1 of psi divided by nu. As we saw before, at rho 1 and rho 2, this expression here cancels because rho prime cancels at plus or minus infinity. So the denominator cancels, and indeed, psi diverges to plus or minus infinity as it should. What can be a bit more specific? So f minus 1 of psi divided by nu reaches its asymptotic value at plus infinity, which is rho 2, when psi divided by nu is larger than something. I don't know what this something, but I mean, it depends on f minus 1. F minus 1 reaches its asymptotic value at minus infinity, 1, when psi divided by nu is less than another something. And the width of the interface is the difference between these two something multiplied by nu, of course. That's the typical width. So the width of the shock is proportional to nu. It means that indeed, when nu goes to 0, we again find a sharp shock as in the simple-minded advection equation. So that's nice. And one can also perform other checks. So remember, the second derivative of Q with respect to rho is the first derivative of C with respect to rho, which we assume positive. Remember that was there. C is the increasing function of rho. So this object, Q of rho minus U rho plus A, the denominator here, behaves like that. It cancels at rho 1 and rho 2. It's negative between the roots. And since it's negative, indeed, rho prime, given by this object here, rho prime, is negative as it should. So one has something of that shape. And if one wants to be more precise, one should specify what is rho. This is done in this exercise. I will not comment it, but you assume that Q is quadratic and that its second derivative is now negative, as in traffic flow, and just for change. And you can compute the exact expression for rho, and it's called a Taylor profile. It's a simple ratio of exponentials. And the width, it's not nice here, but it's mu divided by alpha rho 2 minus rho 1, where alpha is defined there. Anyway, okay, so when one introduces some viscosity, one gets a shock which is more reasonable, a smooth function, interpolating between the two asymptotic values in the case of initial Riemann conditions, and we're happy with that. So it means our sharp shock had some sense. It's a limiting situation when the viscosity goes to 0. But in some situations, viscosity is indeed negligible, and instead, dispersive effects are important. And this is the case, for instance, if our diffusion advection equation is replaced by an equation of this type. Here we have not a second derivative, but a third derivative. And this guy here means that there is dispersion in the equation. It's easy to see it again. Consider rho, which would be constant plus a small perturbation, and a linearized equation 2 there. So that's time derivative of rho 1 plus C naught, which is C of rho naught. Position derivative of rho 1x equals mu times the third derivative of rho 1 with respect to position. It's a linear equation. One looks for plane wave solutions. And if you insert that into this, you will find here minus I omega plus C naught ik equals nu ik to the power 3, which is, removing the i's, omega equals C naught k plus nu k cubed. And if you plot it, that's a dispersion relation, omega is a function of k. If nu is small, for a long time you have a straight line of constant slope C naught, but at large Q, you have some bending, upwards or backwards, depending on the sign of nu. But this bending means you have dispersion. And in this case, the shock behaves in a completely different manner than in the presence of damping. And so I just give you here a schematic for a model equation where C of rho equals rho. Okay, so you take an initial profile, which is not of Riemann type, not discontinuous, but very sharp. Let it evolve. So this guy has a C, which is large, and this one C, which is small, the characteristic cross. And if one has a simple advection equation, in the case where C of rho is equal to rho, it's called Hopf equation. And one has steepening, then breaking of the wave, and the shock is regularized by a sharp discontinuity. If instead you have, say, a small epsilon times the second derivative, this is called Burger's equation. One has the Taylor profile, just the profile established in the exercise. And if one has dispersive effect instead of viscosity, so third derivative here, in this case it's called Korteweg-de Vries equation, and the shock is very strange. It's a series of oscillations. It's called the dispersive shock wave, or also an undular bore, and it expands in time. It width expands in time. Instead, here it does not. And this type of solution was found in 73 by Gurevich and Pitaevsky. So, and it's physical. It corresponds, for instance, to an undular bore, which exists in some rivers. In French, it's called Mascaret. And if you go to the site of the lecture, you see a movie of a river Mascaret. And this is indeed something I find interesting, and I'm working on it, but it's a bit too involved for this lecture. That would take too much time to discuss it. We will just discuss other simple solutions not related to shock, which are solitons of this dispersive equation, which is known as KdV. So let's go to KdV. Remember, we had this equation there with the third derivative, the right, which is the simplest way to include dispersion in the advection equation. So this is advection, and I add a correcting term here with the third derivative. Look what happens for weak nonlinearity. So rho, C of rho here is, if it were only C naught, it would not be nonlinear. The equation would be linear. So height C of rho equals C naught plus a small something, which is C1 rho. Oh yeah, by the way, C1 can be positive or negative, and also nu. And change variable. Write psi equals x minus C naught t, tau equals t. So we did the math in the first lecture, I think. I won't do it again. d dx equals d d psi. d dt is minus C naught d d psi plus d tau. So this minus C naught d psi will cancel the contribution here from C naught, and one is left with rho tau plus C1 rho sub psi minus nu d rho divided third derivative of rho with respect to psi equals 0. And then one just now does a scaling on rho, tau, and psi. So denote t equals alpha tau. This t is not the same as this one, but I mean, it's still a time, so one doesn't have so many notations. So I call it t, but it's not the same as this initial t there. X also is a scaling on psi with a constant parameter beta. Again, it's not the same as the initial x. And now the rescaled rho is called u. Okay, so if you change this, if you include this new notation in the blue equation there, you easily find that alpha, gamma, u sub t. Here, for instance, you have alpha because of the time of the tau derivative, gamma because rho is gamma u, plus, and so on and so forth. So you find here that gamma factorizes out, because here you have a gamma square because you have two rhos. Instead, here and here you have a single rho. And if you choose properly alpha and beta and gamma, you end up with a canonical form, which is sub u sub t plus u ux plus third derivative of u with respect to x equals 0. And it's known as a Korteweg-de Vries equation, KdV. It was first obtained by Korteweg and his student De Vries in 1895 when they were studying shallow water waves. So we will discuss now some special solutions of this Korteweg-de Vries equation, which are solitons. So they are a solution of KdV, which is recalled here. And again, we look for solutions which depend on not independently on x and t, but which move without deformation at constant velocity v. So they depend only on psi equals x minus vt, where, for instance, we choose positive v. So if you plug these into KdV, you find immediately that minus v u prime plus u prime plus u 3 primes equals 0, where u prime is du dxi. And this guy has the first integral. It's very easy, minus, it's there. Where C1 is an integration constant. Now, one can perform again a further integration by multiplying by u prime and integrating. So for instance, here, you know, if you have u prime, so the primitive is u squared divided by 2. And here you have, I mean, it's easy to find this expression there, minus 1/2 vu square plus 1/6 u3 plus 1/2 u prime square. And indeed, if you derive this, you get u prime prime equals C1u plus C2, where C2 is a new integration constant. And you can always cast it in the form 1/2 of u prime square plus w of u equals a constant C2, where w of u is a third order polynomial. And we wrote it in this way because it's formally equivalent to the conservation of total mechanical energy of a one-dimensional particle which moves in a potential v of x. This would be kinetic energy. This plays the role of kinetic energy. So what would be x is for us u, and what would be time is for us psi. So this would be the kinetic energy. This would be the equivalent of the potential energy. And this would be the total energy. And if you want a bounded motion for x, you know that your potential should have you should have a depth, a hole in the potential. So v cannot be monotonous. So here we want something bounded. W should not be monotonous, meaning that its derivative, dw derivative with respect to u, should have two zeros, or should have zeros. And it's a second order polynomial. It has zeros if its discriminant is positive. Believe me, this is the discriminant. And then the zeros are these values there. Again, believe me. So I make a check in the case C1 negative. So this is the shape of W when this condition is met. And you see, W is the equivalent of a potential. Indeed, in this case, there exists a bounded motion of the particle if the energy is somewhere here. If the total energy is somewhere here, I bounce between these two values. So if I were just here, the total energy were close to the minimum, I could approximate the curve by a parabola, and I would find sinusoidal oscillations, linear oscillations. Here, the oscillations are no longer linear. And here they are spatial. If one is just here on the edge of being not bounded. We'll discuss that. So this is the shape of W of u. These are the important characteristic values of u and of W of u. I mean, believe me, this is easy computation at high school level. I mean, you should do them by yourself. No need that I give you the answer. So just remind this, recall this shape, and we change, we introduce new notation now. this guy will be denoted as U naught. Oops, there. So that's the same picture. And here, this is U naught. And so U naught is this guy. And again, it's a relabeling of the important points, but I mean, it's simple. Now, we consider the situation where C2, the equivalent total energy, was just here at the local maximum. So what does happen? If you start from here, so it takes you a long time to depart from equilibrium, and then U increases, you bounce here at UM, you go back, and again, it takes a long time to reach exactly U naught. And if you plot U as a function of psi, you get something like that. And this type of solution is called the soliton. You know, it's a single bump which moves without changing shape. So again, it's a case where C2 is just here. It's W of U naught, sorry. U naught is missing here. So now this equation here is the case where this is W of U naught, okay? So it reads 1/2 U prime square equals W of U naught minus W of U. W is a third order polynomial. And this difference here is the difference there between W of U naught and W of U. I mean, it has a double zero at U naught, and it also cancels at UN. And it's positive. So it's of this form, U minus U naught square times UM minus U. It's positive between U naught and UM. And the 1/6 here is just this 1/6 that we had already. So it has to be of this form. And now, written under this form, it's easy to integrate. Okay, I mean, I spent some time, but not too long. Let's write U of psi equals U naught plus something. And if you insert that in the equation, you find that this something prime square is 1/3 of V squared times Vm minus V, where Vm is Um minus U naught, is 3 times V minus U naught. Okay, and this reads d psi divided by square root of 3 equals plus or minus dV divided by V square root of Vm minus V. And I mean, it's no need that I do it in more detail. You change variable, you write V equals Vm divided by cos square theta. And you find that theta is proportional to psi. And eventually, the solution of this equation yields the solution for U, which is U of psi equals U naught plus 3 V minus U naught divided by cos square or something, which is linear in psi. And recall that psi is x minus bt. So this is the analytical expression of the soliton solution of KdV equation. You can check that it works also when U naught is negative, and negative U naught is equivalent to C1 positive. And the sole condition you have to fulfill is that the square root is well defined, that V is larger than U naught, and which is always satisfied when this guy is positive, which we assumed. And remember, because U naught equals V minus this guy. So indeed, V is larger than U naught. So here, the thing is, for given U naught, you can find a soliton solution, which moves at velocity V, provided that V is larger than U naught. The solution looks like that. It's a soliton. So it was a bit mathematical. Let's try to discuss very roughly where does all this behavior comes from. So let's use hand-waving arguments to derive the main characteristics of the KdV soliton. So remember, we had the linear dispersion relation. Where was it? Here, for equation 2. But for us, C of rho is equal to rho and nu equals -1 for KdV. Okay, so we had this guy, which is now omega equals u naught k minus k to the power 3. So if you compute the phase velocity, which is omega divided by k, it will be u naught minus k squared. Okay, and the phase velocity is k dependent. And this means that if you make a Fourier transform or a Fourier analysis, all the Fourier components will not move at the same velocity, and that will induce some spreading of the weight. And one does not have spreading for the soliton, and it means that the spreading is compensated. And the only thing we have to explain this compensation is nonlinearity. So let's try to make a kind of a nonlinear version of this V phi. So we make something very ugly, change U naught, but something which will be of order U naught plus UM, where UM here is the typical value of the maximum. Okay, and minus k square, where we say minus k square typical. And of course, if you have a bump of width L, if you do a Fourier transform, the typical k will be 1 over L. So if you want cancellation here, you should have that UM, the increase here with respect to U naught, is 1 over L square. And then the phase velocity will not depend on k, and indeed nonlinearity will kill dispersion. Now, what will be the velocity of this object? There is no reason that it's equal to the phase velocity. And we will compute it by using a different argument due to Stokes, actually. You consider the boundaries, the outskirt of the solitary wave. For instance, this guy here, where you have a small increase with respect to U naught, and it's exponentially small. And it has to be, it's 1 over CH squared, so it's an exponent. The boundary, it's exponentially small. It's exponential minus k tilde, where I don't know what k tilde is, times x minus vt, because x minus vt is the coordinate here of the center. Now, this is a small perturbation of the background. So one can perform a linear expansion, exactly as we did in the case of a plane wave. And for the plane wave, we obtain a dispersion relation where omega was a function of k. And this function actually is here. It's this blue function here. But now, compare this expression and this one. You see that k tilde is replaced by minus ik. And k tilde v is equivalent of minus I omega. So since omega is a function of k, you should have, what is the equivalent of omega is k tilde v divided by minus I. It's I k tilde v equals function of the equivalent of k, which is I k tilde. And if you use the non-function, which is here, you're bound to find k tilde v equals u naught k tilde plus k tilde 3. I mean, one can redo the math, but they were done already. But so at this point, this is rigorous. You can factorize out k tilde, and you get that v is u naught plus k tilde square. Now, let's stop being rigorous, but you see that here, k tilde, if you check this bump, it has to be 1 over L, since you have to decrease when you're at a distance large compared to L, you're negligible. So k tilde has to be 1 over L here. It means that V is of order U naught plus 1 over L square. And this k tilde square, you replace it by L square. And indeed, I mean, both estimates are in agreement with the exact result. For instance, you find here that L square is 1 over, or L is 1 over square root of V minus U naught. And indeed, this is what you have here. The width is 1 over square root of V minus U naught. And you find also that the amplitude UM, actually it's more like VM. The amplitude here is V minus U naught. And indeed, you see 1 over I square is V minus U naught. So this just means that the physical origin of the existence of the soliton lies really in the compensation between dispersion and nonlinearity. And this will be the case for any nonlinear equation which admits a soliton equation. You can find a soliton which moves without spreading because of this compensation. And this is the end of this third lecture. If I can stop it.